Hello, my name is Dean Contover. You're watching The Current Buzz today. Today we have somebody from AAA. Everyone knows AAA or should know it. It means the American Automobile Association. And we have the spokesman from AAA, Mark Schieldrop. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, that's the way it is, okay? And he's a public affairs person. And this is the first time he's been to Chumps of Television. So welcome aboard.
Thank you
and
very
thank
much.
you for coming.
It's great to be here.
And we're going to talk a little about AAA.
Yeah.
People have questions about AAA. That's why I called you guys in. And you were nice enough to come up, drive up from Providence, right?
Yeah.
And AAA Northeast, right? AAA Northeast is in regards to 5 states.
Yeah.
The New England states and New York. The whole state of New York?
No, not the whole state. A good chunk of it, Utica portion.
Excuse me.
Where they get a lot of snow.
Oh, okay.
So my colleagues they got another 2 feet over the weekend. And then
Utica?
Utica.
Yeah,
Upstate.
Yeah, I know where.
Oh, yeah.
Utica is.
Yeah, it's beautiful country up there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Finger Lakes.
Yeah, the Finger Lakes region.
What is it, Utica College? Is that it? Utica?
I'm not sure.
Which school's there in the town of Utica?
Now you're quizzing
okay.
me. I'm not sure.
No, I know this. Okay.
No, I'm not from there.
Okay.
I have some good colleagues up there.
All right.
So that is a portion of our territory.
All right.
And then we have Manhattan and Long Island. So people get confused sometimes when they say AAA Northeast. That's the whole Northeast region, or AAA. I thought you were a national organization, and we're a federation of clubs around the country. So we're all linked together.
Okay.
But we're a regional club, and so we have the whole state of Rhode Island, the whole state of Massachusetts, a chunk of New York, and some chunks of New Jersey and Connecticut as well. So really, Rhode Island and Mass, we are fully saturated. We cover everybody, but we have large swaths of territory in those other 5 states. So we're one of the larger clubs in the country.
Okay, tell me what your mission is, basically. I mean, what do you there? I know that you have membership, and there's membership dues every year.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're a membership-based organization. We're an auto club.
Right.
So we're not really your typical corporation, so to speak, but we are structured like a company, and our mission really is to help our members and to serve our members. So most people, they think of AAA, they think of roadside assistance. That's our bread and butter. People get AAA kind of as that extra insurance policy in their back pocket. So if something goes wrong on the road, they know they can call AAA, and we'll come and we'll either change that tire for you, replace that battery for you, give you a few gallons of gas, or even tow you to a garage if that's what it takes.
Okay.
But we're there for you. And that's really the core of our mission, is serving our members. But over the years, we've really expanded what we do and what we offer. And a lot of folks, they get AAA because they want that roadside assistance, but then they start to realize that their membership gives them a lot more. We have a travel agency, so a lot of people book their travel through AAA. And that's a free part of your membership. So when you're a AAA member, you have a travel agent there.
You don't pay anything to the travel agent? No,
all that's included in your membership.
Oh,
so
okay.
There are different tiers of membership.
Oh, okay.
And that usually really relates to how far we'll tow you or how many calls you get a year. So some folks where maybe they really go on extensive road trips across the country, or they have multiple vehicles, or they're driving a couple older vehicles, maybe a classic car, maybe they got a sports car, they got that pickup truck.
I see.
Those are the folks that are going to want to pay a little bit more for the premier membership, where if they're broken down a few hundred miles away from home, we'll still tow you all the way back to your local garage. But really, the roadside assistance is why people.
Okay, so roadside assistance, I understand that, and it's happened to me, and I'm going to give you an example. All right, I blow my tire, right? Yep. Do you come out and put the donut, the little what they call the donut in the trunk of the tire that's usually flat, and a lot of people forget when they put air in their tire, they forget to put air in their donut tire, and then when they need it, it's half flat.
Yeah, that donut, if you're lucky to even have a donut these days, because a lot of times...
Oh, no kidding.
No, many cars, because the automakers are trying to save weight. They want the cars lighter, because that gives them a little bit better fuel economy.
Oh.
And plus, modern cars have gotten heavier and heavier. So they're figuring, you know what, instead of a full-size spare tire, let's give them a little donut. And now they're looking at the donut and saying, let's get rid of that.
No
so
kidding.
You might have a can of Fix-A-Flat back there and maybe some patches. So when our driver shows up with the tow truck. They're going to kind of assess the situation. They're going to say, what kind of car is it? We know vehicles that aren't even sold with spare tires, so we might even have a heads up before we get there to know what to expect.
Oh, no kidding. All right.
They see if there's a donut. We'll check the condition of it, make sure that it's safe to use. If that donut's 15, 20 years old, that rubber is degraded. It's going to blow
even
up.
with tires on the car and so forth,
Right.
you should get your car, even though you don't use them that much, especially if you're elderly and you have a 15-year-old car, you should put new tires on it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Tires age, not just, you don't just look at the tread wear, you look at the age of the tire too. And that same goes for oil. That's one of those things that people sometimes don't realize is, say, you're an older person, you're not commuting to work anymore, you're only putting maybe 1,000 miles a year on your car. That doesn't mean you don't have to change your oil for 5 years. You got to change them every 6 months because that oil degrades. Water in the atmosphere, the oil connects into that.
Good point.
Yeah, and you get a fluid, water in your engine, and you want to flush that oil out and use
So we want people to get an oil change if you haven't got an oil change in the last year. Even though it may say now with the synthetic oil 10,000 miles, and if you've had a car sitting a year, you should get an oil change.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's always a good rule of thumb. And when it comes to changing that tire, the technician who's at the scene, they're going to make sure you're going to be safe to go on that spare. And if it turns out that we can't use that spare, we're just going to get you on that flatbed and tow you to either your preferred, shop to get a new tire put on, or bring your car back home for you, so you can sort it out yourself. Really, that's something that we work out with the member on the roadside.
That's a good question. Another one. Let's say I get into an accident. Hopefully, I'm not going to get one. Could I request a AAA tow truck to tow me? How's that?
Yeah,
work?
you can. If your car's
it might be
disabled.
longer though.
It might be. That's something you want to work out with whoever responds to the scene. So if it's between you and another person, you exchange insurance paperwork, and you call up AAA and say, I'm going to need a tow back. I was just in a crash. Yeah, we'll come and get you if police are involved or anything like that. You're going to want to talk.
Usually they are when it's towed.
Yeah. And in that case, you're going to want to make sure that you work with the responding officer and tell them, I've got AAA coming. Don't bring in a tow. I've got it covered.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so that way a tow isn't dispatched on your behalf. So you want to make sure you kind of speak up for yourself.
It may take a little longer. They may be upset.
It could be, or it could be a tow that actually is one of our contractors. That's
I see.
Yeah, so sometimes that it could be almost the same vehicle. We have a pretty expansive fleet throughout our territory, but we do have really great third-party partners that work hard to get that AAA badge on their truck, and they'll respond to those types of calls as well.
24/7.
Yeah, we're 24/7, 365. New Year's Eve, Christmas Day, doesn't matter. We're there to help you.
It can happen.
I know it can. Thanksgiving, there was a great story in the Providence Journal over the past year where a reporter actually spent Thanksgiving Day with one of our drivers just to see what it's like.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a really great story because, it really captured what we're all about. That driver went to a house where somebody had food to drive to Thanksgiving Day with their family in the back of the car, and the car wouldn't start. So we were able to get that new battery in for them, charge it up, and get them on their way. So there were about 3 calls in that story where our driver really kind of saved Thanksgiving for folks. So
yeah, that's another thing in regards to batteries. Batteries basically are good for 3 years. So look at your battery. Sometimes they have a date on it.
Yeah.
And but most batteries don't, but some of them do. And I remember the old days, they used to have a date on it, and it would give you an idea when to get a new battery.
You're right. 3 years is a little bit on the early side. We'd say 3 to 5 years is when we start to see batteries die.
Even though you don't drive it that much, if you have your car for 5 years and you have a new battery, you should get a new battery.
Yeah, there's a breakdown in the chemistry of that battery.
Again,
and it wears out over time. And what's interesting about batteries is it's the heat of the summer that kills the battery. That's where the batteries wear out the most. But when it's warm out, the battery doesn't need a lot of energy to actually turn that engine over. In the winter, it needs a lot more energy to actually give enough strength to turn that engine over. So your battery wears out in the summer, but you really don't notice it until the winter. So that's why that first cold snap, we usually get a pretty decent surge in calls of folks saying, oh, my battery died. So 3 years is when you need to start thinking about it. We're not saying replace it automatically. You're gonna just have to start thinking about your battery at some point in the next year or two. If I wake up in the winter and it doesn't start, that's because the battery's died. It's not a fault of the battery, it's just the nature of a battery today. So we have a battery service
which is part of your AAA membership. So it's a free thing. You just call up or use the app.
You have enough batteries too.
We have batteries. We have them in stock, and they're interstate batteries.
Even on the truck, right?
Yeah, we have a battery truck.
Yeah, I know.
So we come to your driveway. We test that battery. So sometimes the battery's all right. You know, the
connections.
The connections get a little corroded sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes all it takes is take those connections off,
Clean them off.
scrape them with the little wire brush, lubricate, put them back on, clean it up, give the battery a little bit of a charge, and you're good to go. So we'll test the battery and tell you how much life is left.
On the terminals, you should put battery gel. There's a gel. You don't have to buy. You can use Vaseline.
Yeah.
And put that around there so it won't corrode.
Yep.
That's my experience.
Yeah.
in
You've
regards
dealt
to
with batteries
battery.
before. It's
Yeah.
right on the money. That's exactly it.
Yeah. I'm going to come to your wheelhouse in regards to petroleum.
Oh, yeah.
And tell me what's happening with petroleum. What do you expect in the next 6 months, a year out, and so forth? Some countries are holding back their oil production. We produce oil. I think we've broken the record this year, aren't we?
Yeah, actually, the last 2 weeks in a row, we've matched the all-time record of 13.3 million barrels a day of production here in the United States.
Is that clean oil or dirty oil?
Yeah, it's what we call WTI, West Texas Intermediate. Most of it's coming from the Permian Basin in the western part of the country.
Okay.
We still, we're pulling oil out of the Gulf. We're pulling oil out of Alaska. We are the world's leading producer of oil now. So a lot of your viewers,
So we're ahead of Russia and Saudi Arabia.
We're ahead of everybody. We're ahead of everybody, and we're increasing that gap year after year. So many of your viewers might still be thinking the way it was, even 10, 20 years ago when it was the Saudi Arabians who basically ruled oil.
Right, yeah.
It was Saudi oil for everybody, and we were really kind of at the whims of OPEC, which is the oil-producing countries, that the oil cartel out there. What's interesting now is that the United States has risen to such a degree that they have announced production cuts, about 2 million barrels a month, starting last summer. And 10 years ago, if the Saudis or if OPEC said we're going to cut production by 1 million barrels a day, we'd see oil prices shoot up, maybe $10 overnight. The market just seems to be shrugging it off because really there's so much oil coming to the U.S. So a lot of it is what you'd say dirty, shale oil,
shale oil,
hydraulic
that's
fracking, and all that stuff. But it's important to note that in the last few years, refiners have gotten really good at working with that product, even here in the United States. So a lot of the oil we produce in the U.S. actually gets shipped out all around the world to different refineries that are equipped to refine that oil into usable product. And a lot of it ends up getting shipped back here. So a lot of the gas coming in the port of New York or New Jersey is actually WTI that was drilled here and shipped out and then shipped back. So the oil market's kind of interconnected and there's product flowing back and forth all over the place. But increasingly, we are converting WTI that we drill and pull out of the ground here into gasoline that we use here in the United States.
Okay. Explain what the petroleum reserve is.
So the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
Strategic, I'm sorry, strategic.
Yeah, so the Biden
It's strategic.
Yes, it is strategic, and it's really kind of a big buffer that we have. And we saw a couple years ago when Russia invaded Ukraine, gas prices got to $5 a gallon. I was on TV every night, what's going on with gas prices? These prices are insane. We really tapped into that SPR, the reserve, quite a bit to try to help improve the inventory situation. There was a bit of a shock to the oil markets in 2022, and we saw really tight inventories of oil and gasoline. Not necessarily oil here, but a lot of Europe depends on Russian oil, and that's really the long and short of it. And that supply pretty much got cut off for Europe, so they really turned to the United States to replace that product. And guess what? We're here in the Northeast. We're the easiest connection to Europe.
Yeah.
So a lot of product that normally would have helped flush reserves for us ended up getting shipped out there. That situation is totally resolved. In fact, we have tons of gasoline right now. So that's part of the reason why gas, even though we didn't get under $3 a gallon recently, we're at about $3.18, $3.19 or so here in Mass today.
I saw $2.99 somewhere.
You can still get it for $2.99 for sure. But the statewide average, we're in the low threes. If our inventory situation wasn't where it was, if say we were looking at tighter supplies, we'd be looking at 350, 360 right now, with possibly breaking 4 over the summer. And I don't think that's going to happen. So I have to always say there could be a war breakout somewhere. We could have a whole bunch of hurricanes pummel the south coast or the Gulf Coast this fall, and prices shoot up, you know, so there's always that thing.
Because our refineries are in the south.
There's a lot of them in the south. Yeah, we have
Right,
some here in the
right.
Northeast too,
I see.
but really the big ones are in the south and in the Midwest. So there's always that chance of some random, unpredictable thing that happens that affects markets. But if we just look at the general trend, you know, prices are going to start ticking up a little bit as we head to about June,
I see.
summer driving season. So
Okay.
they tend to bottom out after the holidays, Christmas, January, February. That's when we usually see the lowest prices of the year, and we kind of saw that. So prices are ticking up now as they normally would.
Would you support a bill? The larger the engine, the more you have to pay for your excise tax or whatever. The larger somebody has, or I have a 4-cylinder engine.
Yep.
You know, I should be paying less because I don't use as much gas, and I don't. It's not a heavy vehicle like a pickup truck or SUV. I mean, they do that in Europe, and it does save them money.
Yeah, so that's a tough one. You know, Europe pays a lot more for gas in general.
No, of course, because they don't have oil fields like we do.
Yeah, so, you know, that's a tough one for us because, you know, we don't want people to have to pay more just to get around or the vehicle they drive.
But if they have a bigger vehicle, I mean, they're the bigger complainers. And when the gas goes up, they're the ones that complain the most.
Yeah.
And they didn't live through the 70s like we did in regards to gas lines.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it one way, you know, they are kind of paying the price already because they have to buy more gas.
That's true.
And then they're paying more in taxes for the gas that they buy.
Right.
So there's that. You know, one thing that we are concerned about in terms of the revenue we generate from people driving is what happens when we see more electric vehicles on the road. Because right now the gas tax funds a lot of our infrastructure. Almost all of that gas tax money is really what, you know, gives us the roads and bridges that we have today. And when more people buy EVs, they're not paying a gas tax. So some states are looking at taxing people for how much they drive. Vehicle miles traveled is one of those things. So your odometer would basically be determining what your tax bill would be and not necessarily how much you pay at the pump because you're not paying at the pump.
Because once you get inspected, your odometer is put in.
Yeah. So some folks don't like that because they feel that, you know, that penalizes people that, you know, are trying to be efficient and drive something that has less impact. You know, if it's just based on miles, that means the person with the, you know, giant, you know, 6,000-pound Hummer EV that, you know, you have to plug in and uses a lot more energy just to charge up. Should they pay the same as somebody driving a, you know, a small vehicle like the Chevy Bolt or something like that? So that's a little bit above my pay grade. You know, it's hard for me to really weigh in on, you know, that. Transportation funding is really complicated, and there's a lot of different people with different priorities.
That's true.
So anything that favors one group, you're going to really upset somebody else. You know, if you think about just what goes on in communities where they decide we're going to reduce the number of lanes and we're going to add some bike lanes and pedestrian infrastructure, you know, you get some community battles there. And at AAA,
I have my opinions in regards to bike lanes and so forth.
Yeah, we try not to wade into issues where we know that we might be penalizing someone at the expense of another. So we try to look at things that really benefit everybody. So that's why traffic safety, and those sorts of things.
The bike lanes in the United Kingdom are 12 inches wide.
Yeah, they're tiny.
Yeah, they're tiny.
And so are the roads. And that's the thing about Europe. You know, people talk about the challenge of infrastructure here in the Northeast because we're the oldest part of the country.
That's true.
But if you go to, you know, if anyone's traveled through Europe and walked around the streets of Paris or London or you know, Florence, Italy, and you look around, you realize we have pretty big roads here, even in the Northeast. So, you know, those types of challenges, they're not unique to us.
I have about 5 minutes. I like to get a lot of things in.
Yeah.
RMV appointments now. If you're AAA, you can go to RMV.
Huge benefit to the membership. That's one of the main reasons people sign up in the first place. They
No
don't want to
kidding.
wait in line at the RMV.
No kidding.
They want to just walk into AAA.
Is it just for licenses, or can I bring in my title and you transfer the title? Or
there are some transactions that you do have to do at the registry.
Okay.
Some of them have to do with that.
Okay.
So really, it's mainly licenses.
Okay.
Permits for your teen driver.
Okay.
Driver's education. We have a driving school. Passport photos. We're doing a lot of the real ID now, so folks are getting their license upgraded.
Let's
so
talk about the real ID. May 7th, 2025.
Yeah.
I have paperwork here.
I don't know if the deadline's going to be extended again. I'm not sure. There's a chance.
But that's what they're saying.
But what it means, what people need to know about that is, if you're going to fly domestically, even domestically, you're going to need a real ID.
That's right.
You're going to have to. They're not going to let you on a plane.
They're
You
not
got to get that license upgraded.
That's right.
However, if you have a U.S. passport that's valid and not going to expire in 90 days, you can use that instead. So when that deadline occurs, if you don't have a real ID, you're not going to be able to fly down to Florida and see your grandkids.
Now they have a passport card. A lot of people are getting those for their children.
Yes.
And could you use a passport card?
I believe you can use a passport card in lieu of a real ID to fly domestically.
A passport card's like a license. You can get it for your child or your grandchild. It's good for, God, I think 5 years or something like that. And it's $35 or $40. I'd have to look it up, but you could do that, and it's helpful because children don't have IDs. So if you're flying, they could use that. I'm sure that passport card rather than get a passport.
That's right.
So
Registry of Motor Vehicles has a pretty good kind of checklist of
I have the
what real
checklist
IDs are all
right here,
about,
yeah.
what you need,
Yeah.
and why you'll need it, and all that good stuff.
you need your birth certificate wherever you were born with the seal. No copies. They will not
no
accept
copies, nothing laminated.
Nothing laminated.
No,
That's another
and not
thing.
from like a church, like
No,
anything.
or a
It has to be
hospital.
from a municipality.
That's correct.
It has to be from the city or town.
That's right.
So sometimes you have to do a little footwork.
And
to
your
get it.
social security card can't be on the metal piece with the numbers punched in or laminated. Nothing laminated is allowed anymore in government. You have to have a sealed document. And so, I mean, I have the list, current ID, something to that effect. But you have to have a birth certificate. And if you don't have your social security card, you should go down. You should go down to the Social Security office and get it.
Yeah, it's not that bad. I had to replace mine myself because I lost my wallet. It was only a few dollars online. You fill out some paperwork digitally. I didn't have to go anywhere. I paid this small fee. It came surprisingly quick. I thought it would take months.
It takes a couple of weeks.
It's a few weeks. It's doable. I know it's overwhelming for folks to dig all that stuff out, but there are ways to do it, and it's not that bad.
And then when you get all that information in the birth certificate, put it in your marriage certificate, put it in the binder and stuff so you can find it, because it's in different drawers.
That's it.
And people can't find it.
Yeah, start now before it gets nice out. Go through do a little spring cleaning and assemble your documents. And
then they want, within 60 days, your address in regards to a government form, or to electric bill or something.
Yeah, it has
like
to be a
that.
fresh one. You can't pull out a 2-year-old power bill. It has to be recent.
To prove that you live at that address.
Yeah, you just got to prove that you're legit.
That's right.
That's your home. That's where you pay your bills. That's where you pay your taxes.
Okay. Travel tips and maps. It seems like we're getting away from maps. I love maps.
I know.
I have a lot of maps at home. I have the book, because if they knock out the satellites, the GPS, you'd have to depend on a map, and a lot of these kids depend on Waze or whatever.
That's it. We're really just like following the GPS like a bunch of robots, and it's true that we're kind of losing touch with what it means to go on a real journey.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we have seen at AAA, and we still do triptychs. That's one of those things that people remember
good.
from the old days, where you call up, you say, we're going on this road trip down to North Carolina. We want to take a rural route. We'd like to stop at a few fun roadside attractions, and we want to take a rest in this area.
And a hotel that's a AAA hotel.
Yeah, and you would get the map. It would be all cut out. The route would be highlighted. Great service. We still do it. It's digital now, so some folks don't like that. They like the paper maps. I understand it. I'm a little bit like that myself, but I would say don't turn your nose up to it if you haven't tried it. The maps are still pretty great, but the whole thing for me is planning ahead, making a real concerted effort not to just hop in the car, punch in the address, and just go. Think more about what makes the most sense. I want a more direct route. If you use those mapping apps, sometimes they make you take these really circuitous routes to maybe save 1 minute. You find yourself in places you're not familiar with. There's really something to be said about taking a look at that atlas, and especially for planning a longer trip.